the Korean Star League. I'm Nathanias, and we've got another Terran versus Protoss. We get into the semifinals of this week's matches. In the bottom left, we have the red Protoss player. He is classic. The way he got here was just crazy. I mean, his series against DRG was just nuts. Absolutely nuts. I think that it was going off the rails for him pretty quickly, but yeah, I don't know about that. In the top right, his opponent, the blue Terran player, who played at a pretty crazy, agonizing game against Estrella, coming all the way down to battle cruisers and base trades. Oh my, it is Gumiho. And if it is in the month of December, Gumiho. And if you're, yeah, no, that's it. If you need to tend to the crops in the field, you might find that you might need a hoe, but probably not a Gumiho, since that's a person and not a tool. Not that those two things have to be mutually exclusive. Probe Scout coming up from Classic. Gumiho against Protoss has been doing some funky stuff. I think that Estrella is a different type of opponent than Classic. I feel like I expect Classic to play a little bit more traditional. Estrella, we kind of know him for that weirdness, that odd side of things. Classic's probably improved his range of strategy by being so competitive online recently. He's been a mainstay in the KSL. We've seen him all over the place. I mean, the number of people that have people really been trying to prop Classic up too, because they see that he's like him and Hero are like the only guys that go to the big tournaments now that can compete with the Protoss banner, you know? So whether Classic wanted it or not, he's one of the few, the proud, the Protoss hopes of SC2. And Gumiho, well, Terran does just fine these days, but Gumiho, former GSL champion and arguably the most interesting Terran player to ever compete in StarCraft, as he has such an illustrious history and career and played a great many storied match, and in his own way pushed the meta forward as much as he could. I'm not biased at all. No, not me. Nathan, a Gumiho fan? You mean that guy that wears tank tops and builds battle cruisers? Likes the Korean guy that builds battle cruisers? The two guys that both play with a hand towel over their mouse? Yeah, I like Gumiho. He's a pretty cool guy. He's pretty cool. Now here's what's interesting. Classic went for a Stargate opening every single game against DRG, but it's like normal to open with a Stargate versus Zerg. That is what you do. That's what you're supposed to do. Now against Terran, you don't see it as much. And the reason for that is you can be a little more vulnerable to early cyclones or marine type pressures and what have you. And Gumiho's going to defend this couple of adepts just running out there. It looks like the mine did not get a kill either, so kind of barely dodged that. Adept gets out. Doesn't delay the base much, but back to the Phoenix. If you're a Protoss player and you build Phoenix this early, you have one objective 99% of the time. That is shut down the mine drop easily. With Stalkers, you can fumble, they can get baited out of position, and then even sometimes the mines, two or three of them, one still burrows. But when you have Phoenix, you can just graviton beam them. You just lift them up. Just use your Phoenix, lift up the mines so they can't burrow in your mineral line, and then you just kill them. So that's a very... It's a niche kind of strategy, because this is not something that you see all the time. But if you play ladder, you'll definitely see a decent amount of people mix this build in, because it is something that if you were a Protoss player and you said, I really struggle against mine drops, somebody has probably told you at one point or another that you should try this build. You go into the Robo right after, you still can get observers out, you go to Robo Bay. I mean, this is almost like Roddy Protoss mech vibes. Straight to Robo Bay when you only have one gateway. I mean, he's building a second one, but still, he only has one gateway. And, Classic can't really reach much more than this. Widow Mine gets a decent couple shots, but I think for 4 mines, I think for 4 Widow Mines, he was hoping for a little bit more. But on the flip side, the Phoenix come in kind of late in that fight. And by kind of, I mean very late. He was trying to micro the other guys. Oh, the mines all came up here. Oh, no. There's no medevac. There's nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. But the Phoenix are also out of energy, so just burrow and fire. Wow, is this... Now this is pod racing. He gets another 5 probes. Absolutely... That absolutely should not ever happen, ever. But that's quite hilarious. That's quite hilarious. I don't think I've ever seen something like that. The three mines just chilling there. Just awkward. That's the sound effects we need to get on the soundboard. That's what I need. Why do I not have a button that just makes that tumbleweed rolling across the middle of the Olympic Avenue sound? So we do have a Colossus on the way for Classic. Just because I know this has been confusing for some people. I do believe the G8 tournament, they used like a patched version of the game or a mod. They used like a custom mod to make the Colossus range lower. So a lot of people were like, oh, Colossus are nerfed. There are a lot of people out there that think the Colossus has been nerfed because of that tournament and a Reddit thread about them being nerfed. But that patch actually never came out. So Colossi still get the full 10 range if you research the upgrade. I do not believe that the KSL is playing on the custom mod. So they use the live official Blizzard version of the game. So mostly just pointing that out because the difference between 10 and 9 range is a pretty big deal. So the Colossus will be powerful. Will be powerful in this match. It will not be complete trash like you may be used to seeing it. So we got you. Gumiho is the multi-tool of SC2. Exactly. You thought, yo, I always thought I was so cool. One of my babysitters had a multi-tool. I thought it was the coolest thing ever. They had like a screwdriver, bottle opener. I don't know. I mean, it was really just strange to see those two things on the same device. I can't even remember what else was on there. Some kind of thing for digging out grout. You guys know what's on a multi-tool, okay? But that's Gumiho. He does all the builds. He plays the bio, he plays the mech. He plays the Marines, he plays the Ghosts. He builds Hellions, he builds battlecruisers. But you know what he doesn't do? He doesn't proxy much. Gumiho is not really much of a cheeser. Now, does that mean that he literally never cheeses? No, we see it occasionally. He does it more now than he used to, especially. I think people probably use his reputation against him a little bit. These Phoenix, though, they deny a lot of map control. They make it difficult to move out of your base. And because he's already making Vikings to deal with the Colossus, and the Phoenix are going to get in their way too, it makes things very tough. Because for Gumiho, he has to choose if he's going to make medevacs at any point, or if this is going to be a no-heal, just all-in type attack that he goes for. Because he could just try to max out on his bio, get up to 8 Vikings, yeet through the Phoenix, just click on the Colossi and hope he can kill them fast enough. But I don't really see that working in this scenario. Not with 4 Colossi. He needs something like 20 Vikings to just mow that down with no difficulty, but I don't think he's quite there. Of course, if the bio can get onto the Colossus, then that's fine too. This huge open space between the natural and the third, like nobody wants to make a bunch of static defense in this square, but this is the weak point of the map. You know, he doesn't really have his batteries here. He has to retreat to one base or the other eventually, and that's where it gets tough. But he will try to hold this no man's land as long as he can. He's got his 10 range on his Colossi. He can do a pretty tremendous amount of zoning. The Phoenix come forward, just tried to snipe the Raven. I actually really like that they go for the Raven because he's forced to burn both interference matrices at the same time, and now he has no way of shutting the Colossi down at all. Meanwhile, Classic is actually taking the gold base. So that's just a generally pretty filthy strat. Phoenix gonna poke the medevacs a smidge. Maybe he'll try to trade out for a Viking or 2. The Phoenix is largely just messing with AI. Keep in mind, there's not really any stalkers with this army. I think he's just got two stalkers. 2 stalkers total in the entire map. So it's a very ground-focused army. He's kind of counting on the Phoenix baiting the Vikings or the Vikings not being enough. So he has a lot of gateway units ready. A minor supply lead, but nothing huge. I'd say army supply, it's about dead even. Just a handful of workers, which I was going to say a handful of workers that could be worth more on the gold, but the Cyclones rolled up on that base immediately. Right as that gold base was ready to get going, the Cyclones were there. So gets a couple of probe kills. Classic's going to be able to go back to mining that, and the Phoenix can deal with the Cyclone. This is why it's a little bit tough to move out. Those 2 Cyclones just get riggedy wrecked. But you could probably also say that most Terran players are not relying on Cyclones in this matchup in any meaningful way. The Vikings were trying to go to see if they could poke at the Colossus since there is so little. It's because there's no threat of Blink Stalkers jumping on you, you should be trying to kite and poke this army as much as possible. You want the Vikings playing around these terrains that he can't move through. He just got the Observer, so now he no longer has eyes on the Vikings. He did have vision from that before. Marine gets sent behind the mineral line and popped. But you want these Vikings posturing as much as possible. Oh my god, no, he doesn't know. He doesn't know! No! Go back! Go back. Okay, well, now Classic has wedged himself between Gumiho's army and his base. And I mean, I guess it leads to a surround, but he has to fight the Colossi now. So 4 of them absolutely microwaving this army. I mean, these Marines are more burnt than Hot Pockets at this point. The Zealots are going up the ramp into the main base. He's blocking the reinforcements coming out. The only thing going for him is that the Vikings were able to kill 3 of the Colossi, but at what cost? Tank's going to siege on the high ground. It will not be enough, and Classic is going to take game number 1. That was a pretty good match. Let's go to game 2. No anti-air. Hardly any anti-air with his army whatsoever. And yet, at the same time, still just gets so much work done with the Colossi and the Phoenix. Just crazy. Just absolutely crazy. All right, let's go to game number 2 in the bottom left. So we're on Ancient Cistern. This is the big map. This is the big boy map. We have Classic in the bottom left. And in the top right, we have Gumiho. You may recognize this map from all of your games that go for a half hour or longer. And who knows? Who knows what will happen this time around? Guy in chat asks, is this the right spot for Protoss enthusiasts? Yeah, we are. We are Protoss friendly here. We're Protoss friendly. We're Zerg friendly. I seek a fair and fun game for all, you know. That's why I do my Protoss shout-outs. Everybody deserves to be able to enjoy StarCraft because that is when the game is at its best. So Classic is looking for proxies. I wasn't sure if he was going to try to hide anything of his own, but he checks quite a few spots for where you would typically throw down a proxy barracks or you would leave an SCV. He's not taking any chances. Gateway, gas. Are we going to have Nexus before core? No. Okay, so Cybernetics core first. That really tells you everything you need to know. He wants to have... He's on some level, it's probably related to the same thing that drove him to scout for the proxy, that he thinks maybe Gumiho will try to cheese him to get back into the series. And on the other hand, I think it's also possible that maybe he wants to get aggressive. Maybe he wants to get aggressive and he's worried that a proxy would hurt him because his units will be out on the map or something like that. But I don't know. He probably would have already thrown down a pylon somewhere if that's what he was going to do. So this probe should just make its way home, and then we will have the answer to all of those questions and more. We'll even have the answers to questions we didn't ask. And this zealot will now go out and just make sure that there's nothing else anywhere. So Cybernetics core is done. Warp gate begins. We have an adept being chronoed out. And Gumiho, he's doing the normal Terran thing. Factory, Marines, natural, bunker. Maybe we see a reactor. Maybe we just... no, we're like 99% going to be a reactor when this Marine is done. It's all about the add-ons. Terran players and their add-ons. They do love them. Did you guys know that it takes about more time to make the reactor? It takes the same amount of time, actually, to make the reactor than it does the starport. It's kind of interesting to think about. So we can't really get in and do anything because there is a bunker, and it's also 2 Marines instead of just 1. Typically, you only make 1 Marine before you start the reactor, so the fact that he puts that second one there is kind of a tip of the cap. It's a classic. And this Reaper, and now he's looking for the same exact thing. He's like, do you have anything outside my base? Am I getting proxied? There is a Hellion back here, which I think gives a lot more ease of getting rid of this little assault. Oh, the Marines. Oh, he's doing the micro. So the Marines are able to tank 2 hits. So that's what he's just leveraging every hit point he has. And there it is. It's just about a full cleanup. One of the adepts escapes with 30 health, so not too shabby. Reaper shows up, sees, okay, you've got a natural. There's not really anything else to find here. It's already done. And a robotics facility. Robotics facility starts next for Classic. So he can go into his observers, get a little cheeky prism action, what have you. And Gumiho, everything that we've seen, again, extremely kosher Terran build here. Right into the mine drop. Most likely stim 1-1 follow up. Well, not really 1-1. Stim, I was thinking, for some reason I thought 2 medevacs building at the same time meant 1 and 1. That's where that came from. He's going to make a reactor and build medevacs. You keep running, buddy. You're going to make it. Is the Reaper going to make it? The fact that he's still turning to shoot there is really... You're 1 shot away. Now, he didn't... Oh, was he distracting? He's distracting for the drop. It looks like Classic knows, though. His pylon got a good read. He can see this medevac from all the way out here, too, so he knows. If Gumiho tries to push his luck, he's still in vision of him as well, so he knows. And Gumiho can see the stalkers, so he knows. He knows that he knows. I think, anyway. Well, Stim is about 75% done. We've got first medevac coming out now with the Marines. Of course, that mine drop just does absolutely nothing. That's pretty brutal. Now, typically, the barometer for Protoss versus Terran wiggles on that line of whether or not the early pressure does anything. You throw away a medevac, you throw away 3-4 Widow Mines, all the production time of the first 5 minutes of the game basically leads to nothing, and the Protoss still has all of their units and their workers and whatever they were planning to do, and that's what can make it feel so difficult. But that's why he's got this follow-up attack, because he recognized the Observer was coming through. He might have been dealing with some Blinky boys. And look at that. He's going to pick up 7 probes. And maybe a couple more even. Wow. Huge damage. Given the way that this game has played out so far, I mean, Gumiho loses a lot of supply, but he bought himself a lot of time, too. He bought a lot of time. Classic had units out on the map. He was kind of trying to get into Gumiho's face, so this was a very difficult position for him. Yeah, Classic's got his 3rd setup, but he's going into Storm. And we've actually seen this in his PVZ already in this tournament. Classic, the Stalker, High Templar Storm strategy. Of course, you definitely want to have charge lots because that's the meat you need for the Terran, especially to keep those tanks away. And Classic was able to turn around a pretty crazy series against DRG earlier in this tournament, and he did so. He did so with the use of some rather unorthodox strategies, but in one game he went Mass Blink Stalker with Psystorm, and then he just blinked into 6 lurkers, and they all died instantly. Well, the stalkers all died instantly, so I don't think he's going to make a similar mistake here with regard to the tanks, but he's made things a little more varied, shall we say. Double Forge back home. The Forge, not a huge deal since he has a lot of just raw damage through the Psystorm. Really just getting the engagement where he wants it to take place and getting 1 or 2 storms is all he needs. It's all he needs. So now coming up, we've got the Forge finishing, the second one anyway, as he starts that +1, and a second Robo with the Robo Bay. So it's going to be back into Colossus most likely. That's what we're thinking. Let's go back into the Colossus. He has some ghosts mixed in, so he's got quite a bit of damage to deal with Zealot run-bys. Warp Prism tries to go to the natural, and the storms don't really land. They do not end up connecting. He keeps the High Templars safe. They don't get EMP'd. They don't get EMP'd or anything. He's able to just run home. This Marauder now kiting back towards the third base, not going to get away. All his blood spilled out, and his body rolled like 10 feet further forward. Oof. Now, where do the Stalkers and Zealots go here? Where do we go now? Still has a Prism loaded with 4 High Templar. Plenty of energy for storms. Then you've got this army moving out on the top side for Gumiho. He's kind of keeping it all together. I was trying to see if we had another drop coming in on the side. Actually, there is the mines on the new base. So maybe his thought is if I destroy this Nexus, the probes will get rallied over here and then die. But he's already got a cannon in production there, so I believe there should be an armory, or it's about to finish. Yeah, it's about to finish because he needs additional upgrades. So the Widow Mines will not be immediately revealed after they shoot anymore. Classic does have a probe in the middle of the map to spot the army moving out from Gumiho. There's a Zealot watching the other end of that plateau as well. He's basically just saying, as soon as you step across the middle of the field, I just want to know where you are so that I can do stuff like this. This is a very big investment. 16 Zealots. 16 Zealots just getting A-moved. 2 of them are revealed here, but he's trying to bring the rest of them home, because if the army finds those Zealots and just kills them, that's massive. He wants to save these for the fight. The moment that Gumiho commits to the engagement, whoa. The moment Gumiho commits to the engagement, those Zealots are going to go running in. Yep, there they are. Now the main fight happening over here. Templar and the Prism getting dropped on the outside. Storms covering the entire army, including those tanks, and the supply takes a steep hit. But Gumiho manages to kill the Nexus regardless and pull the rest of his army away. His reinforcements now dealing with the Zealots at that third expansion. SCVs fighting it off as well. And this is the 1-1 for Classic kicking in at the beginning of this. So the upgrades, there was a nice advantage most of the game for Gumiho, but Classic made a very, very hard pivot into the Double Forge, and it's paid off. It's paid off very nicely for him, so he's able to keep that going. Now this command center that's on the way, the Zealots are kind of baiting in that direction, still actually has one on the original third. And, you know, for all the things that happened, Classic, his 4th becomes the 3rd. His 3rd becomes the 4th that he's trying to retake, and he finds himself up quite a bit economically. He's not too far ahead worker-wise. The mules are going to bring Gumiho back into a nice spot, but I think that disrupting the economy, messing with the SCVs like that, is still very good for him. And obviously he still has the worker lead, so the mules even things out mineral-wise, but really for Classic, it's about making sure that he can make enough money. You're not supposed to make more money as the Protoss in that situation. You need the base count for the gases so that you can make the units that deal with the bio, so he can continue to stack those Colossi and Disruptors and Templar, and that's his whole army right now. It's AoE. He's got more AoE than Microsoft over here. Picks off another couple of Zealots on the north side. And there's 21 charge lots. So he just keeps making charge lots. 5 Disruptors, 4 Colossi, 3 High Templar, and then Zealots. You just fill the bag. Fill the bag with Zealots. So Gumiho is going to put sensor towers out now. As you can tell, he is starting to feel a little bit of the pressure. He's feeling a little bit of the pressure of the situation that he's being called to. It's 125 gas, man. Or it's like 100 gas. Sensor towers are not cheap. But he needs to know. He needs to know when those counterattacks are going to be coming his way. That's been a tricky thing for him. That's been a very tricky thing for him. Tries to get the EMP on the Templar, but the Prism picks him up. He gets an EMP on the Prism, but quite hard to get around this army to hit him. 2 Vikings for 4 Colossi is also just a lot. Classics army does not look very manageable. Zealots are trying to counterattack during this too. Is going to bait out a stem from a rather large chunk of supply. And then I think about 20 years ago, I made some sort of joke about how all your long games are on this map, and there's a reason for that. It's because it's true. So this one is still going to go all the way down to the wire. It is a very hard map to close out games on. You just have so much ground to cover. And Gumiho, for everything that he's thrown at him, he's still on a relatively low-tech scale. Only 4 Vikings on the map. 1 Viking per Colossus is just not what I see getting it done, you know? And even this army, he splits it out, one of them, with some of the Stalkers and Disruptors, but he's not vulnerable. He left 3 at home, and the Prism is with those Colossi. He has the Prism with the High Templar inside, just chilling over there. So, kind of crazy. Gets the Observer, though. You gotta love the grubby High Templar. You just gotta leave these guys spread out on the map to get those big plays. Looks like he's juggling the Disruptors out of the Prism now. That is gonna get popped. And maybe this is a fight that can work for Gumiho. He kind of had the spread on the high ground, but no, then the Colossi come back into it, and they just keep melting things away. There's just no answer. There's no answer for the Colossus in this army. Gumiho doesn't want to make Vikings. He just doesn't. You could try to go into ranged Liberators or something, but if we look at his bases, no mining on the gas really over there. Not really any mining on the gas on the 3rd. No gas mining on the 4th. He starts geysers, but he's not mining yet. So, very mineral-heavy strategy that he's been trying to play, this Brawler Terran. But I think that Classic's reliance on the Tier 3, I think that was just the smartest possible thing he could have done. He's got 5 Immortals. You're gonna dive the Colossi with Marauders through 5 Immortals? I think Gumiho's super dead here. 4 Colossi, 5 Immortals, and what? 2 Disruptors? Yeah, that'll get it done. That'll get you done. And cover in the flank, cover in the outside, and cover in the dove. GG Classic takes the series 2-0. Brutalizes my boy.